Breaking news. A US defense official says a Venezuelan jet made a dangerous and intentional approach toward a US bomber early this morning. At 5 a.m. over the Caribbean, the sky was calm as a US B-52 cruised at 35,000 feet on a routine freedom of navigation flight. Then everything shifted fast. A Venezuelan Su-30 launched at full power and climbed straight toward the bomber with no warning at all. Instead of holding a safe distance, the fighter moved in close, so close that its jet wash shook the B-52 like sudden turbulence hitting a commercial plane. Inside the bomber, the crew stayed focused. No sudden moves, no panic. But everyone on board knew this wasn't a normal patrol anymore. This was a direct challenge, right in international airspace. And the Venezuelan pilot pushing this close had no idea he was flying into a situation far bigger than he could imagine. If you want to follow this confrontation moment by moment, hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. The close pass over the Caribbean wasn't just another tense moment in the sky. It happened in one of the most sensitive air corridors near Venezuela, a place where every movement is watched and judged. The B-52 was not there to provoke a fight. It was flying a route the US has used for decades to show that international airspace belongs to everyone, not to whoever shouts the loudest. Each mile of that flight carried a message that the rules of the sky still matter. But for Venezuela, that same flight hits something deeper. Their leaders see every US bomber near their coastline as a sign of pressure. Their pilots feel the weight of that. When the Su-30 launched, the pilot believed he needed to show strength to prove they still held control over the air outside their borders. In his mind, getting close to the B-52 was a warning, maybe even a way to push it back. He thought he was setting the tone. What he didn't know was that the encounter had already been shaped long before he left the runway. High above the region, a US AWACS aircraft had been watching the airspace for hours. Its radar picked up the Su-30 the moment it climbed, and the data was instantly shared across the entire force through Link 16. Pilots in distant F-22 seconds saw the same track. A Growler working electronic support saw it too. Everyone on the US side had the same picture. The Su-30 pilot was the only one who didn't. This is why the moment matters. It shows how modern air power works. It's not just fast jets or sharp turns. It's who understands the battle first. The Venezuelan pilot flew with his eyes and instincts. The US pilots flew with a shared view built by machines and training designed over decades. The gap between the two is not about courage. It's about awareness. And that gap is what pushed the situation toward danger. A fighter acting alone tried to pressure a bomber backed by an entire network. One small move could have changed everything. And the Su-30 pilot had no idea how close he came to crossing a line he couldn't come back from. The first real shift in this encounter came the moment a sharp alert tone cut through the quiet inside the B-52 cockpit. It was the kind of sound that makes every crew member straighten up, because it means another aircraft out there has just locked a radar beam onto them. The pilot glanced at the threat display, and the rest of the crew leaned in without anyone saying a word. They didn't know who the radar belonged to yet, but they knew it was close, and they knew it was pointed directly at them. High above the region, the US AWACS already had the full picture. Its radar tracked the Su-30 from the moment it climbed off the Venezuelan coast, and the operator tagged it as Bandit 1. That tag spread instantly across Link 16, showing up on screens in multiple aircraft at the same time. F-22 pilots sitting miles behind the bomber saw the track update. A Growler flying electronic support saw the spike from the fighter's radar sweep. The entire US network now watched the same single jet moving fast toward the bomber's path. But the Su-30 pilot had no idea any of this was happening. All he saw was the large bomber ahead of him, steady and slow, and he believed he was in control. He rolled in close, so close that his jet wash shook the B-52 enough for the crew to feel it. Still, the bomber stayed level. They didn't break formation or turn away, because reacting too fast could turn a tense moment into a dangerous one. Then, the fighter pilot made his strongest move yet. He switched his radar from search mode to lock mode, tightening the beam into a narrow point aimed directly at the bomber. Inside his cockpit, the crosshair brightened and a countdown appeared. Inside the B-52, the alert tone grew sharper. The crew now knew they were in the danger window, even if the fighter never intended to fire. On the Growler, the electronic warfare officer saw the lock instantly. The radar beam stood out on his screen like a bright spike. He captured the pulse and fired the first wave of interference. When the Su-30 tightened his lock again, the Growler returned a stronger burst. Dozens of modified signals shot back toward the fighter. Inside the Su-30 cockpit, the radar picture twitched, broke apart, and then went black. The fighter had lost its main sensor. For the Americans, the shift was clean. AWACS marked Bandit Radar Disrupted. The B-52 logged. Mission continues. The moment the Su-30's radar went dark, the balance in the sky changed fast. The fighter that came in bold was suddenly flying blind in front of a bomber that never broke formation. Inside the B-52, the crew stayed calm but alert. A blind fighter can turn dangerous without meaning to, and everyone on board knew that. High above, the F-22 pilots saw the shift right away. The Su-30 track on their screens drifted, corrected, then drifted again. Small moves, but clear signs the pilot had lost his picture. When a jet loses awareness, even tiny corrections reveal the pressure building in the cockpit. The Su-30 tried to climb, then dipped, scanning the bright sky for the bomber. But the B-52 was no longer where he expected, and he had no radar to help him. He didn't know the Growler behind him was still quietly holding the interference steady, making sure his system stayed offline. Inside the Growler, the electronic warfare officer watched the fighter's path. There was no need for more jamming. The job was already done. The plan now was simple. Keep the fighter unsure without showing anything that could escalate the moment. The F-22 seconds kept their distance, staying invisible. They would not reveal themselves unless the fighter crossed a clear line. One wrong switch, one missile tone, and the Raptors would act. But for now, they simply watched. Below them, the Caribbean looked peaceful, but the air above was anything but. The Su-30 rolled again, trying to find control. The bomber stayed steady on its route, a clear sign of which side held the advantage. One pilot was searching. The other already knew everything he needed. By now, the Su-30 pilot had to feel it, the shift from confidence to worry. He knew something had gone wrong, but not how far it had gone. He had pushed the bomber, and now the sky was pushing back in a way he couldn't read. For the Americans, this was patient control. For the fighter pilot, it was the slow rise of fear. If you think the real turn happened when he pushed too close, press 1. If you think it happened the moment his radar died, press 9 and subscribe to follow what comes next. What happened next was the moment no one on the Venezuelan side expected. The Su-30 pilot, trying to regain control, began a slow loop to search visually for the bomber. He believed the B-52 was still somewhere ahead of him, steady and predictable. But the sky around him told a different story. There was nothing there. No silhouette, no shadow, no sign of the aircraft he had pushed only moments earlier. The real twist was simple. The pilot thought he was forcing the bomber to react, but he had actually flown straight into a space shaped by US forces long before he climbed off the runway. The AWACS watching from above had tracked him from the start. The Growler behind him had already taken his radar away, and the F-22 seconds had been quietly following every move from a place he could not see. Inside the Su-30 cockpit, the empty radar screen stayed dark. The fighter's sensors slowly attempted to restart, but they had nothing clear to show him. The pilot's hands tightened on the stick as he scanned the sky with his eyes alone. The sun was rising now, lighting the clouds in a way that made everything harder to read. He looked left, then right, hoping for even a small sign of the bomber. Nothing. The silence inside his helmet was worse than any alarm. He understood enough about air combat to know that when your main sensor goes down and the sky looks empty, the real danger is usually behind you, not in front. But he still could not see the Raptors who had been watching him the entire time. They stayed silent, just outside visual range, tracking him without a single radio call. Back on the ground, Venezuelan controllers tried reaching him. Their screens showed only a single track moving with an odd pattern, drifting slightly off course. They didn't know why. They didn't know his radar had gone dark. They only knew the situation had changed, and they had no tools to help him understand it. In the cockpit, frustration began to shift into something heavier. The pilot knew he had crossed a line earlier when he locked onto the bomber. He knew he had tried to push a show of strength, but now the sky was answering in a way he couldn't explain. Every second he stayed blind made the air around him feel tighter. That was the real turn of this encounter. Not a missile, not a warning shot, but a pilot realizing he was no longer in control of the moment he started. The turning point of the encounter came as soon as the Su-30 pilot understood his radar was not coming back in time to help him. With nothing but instinct left, he rolled the jet into a sharp split S and pushed the throttle, trying to get back toward his own coastline. It was a fast, emotional move, and every US pilot watching could see the shift from confidence to escape. In the F-22 cockpits, the Raptors tracked the dive in silence. The Su-30's speed increased, but the tension stayed high. A retreating fighter is still a threat if fear pushes him to arm a missile. One wrong switch, even by mistake, could change the entire rules of engagement in a heartbeat. That was the line the Raptors were ready for, but the Su-30 never crossed it. Inside the fighter, the pilot tried again to restart his radar. It flickered, but the picture was still weak. He scanned the bright sky with his eyes, searching for something ahead or behind, but the horizon stayed empty. That emptiness was its own warning. He knew he no longer understood the full situation around him. Above them, the AWACS crew watched the retreat unfold with steady voices. They tracked every altitude drop and speed change, confirming the fighter was heading home. The Growler kept light interference active, just enough to prevent a sudden radar lock that could escalate the moment. The network held the encounter in place without showing a single threat. Inside the B-52, the crew finally took a breath. They had stayed steady through every second of the confrontation, trusting the system around them to manage the risk. Their aircraft never turned away and never needed to. The Su-30 continued falling back toward his coastline. The closer he got, the more his instruments steadied. He didn't need a clear radar picture anymore. All he wanted was distance. The Raptors watched him until he angled fully toward home, then eased away, letting him fade from their screens. That was the climax of the encounter. A fighter pilot leaving shaken, unsure what forced him back, and a US formation that never fired, never revealed itself, yet never lost control of the sky. If you think the moment turned when he dove for home, press 1. If you think it turned when the Raptors chose restraint, press 9 and subscribe to follow how this ends. Hours after the encounter, the official US statement was brief. It said the bomber flew a routine mission in international airspace and that no unsafe actions were taken by US forces. Nothing was said about the Su-30 losing its radar. Nothing about the Growler or the Raptors following quietly behind. The message was calm, but the meaning underneath was clear. For Venezuela, the moment raised hard questions. Their most advanced fighter had been forced to retreat without a single weapon fired and without ever seeing the aircraft shaping the encounter. When commanders reviewed the data, they saw only a radar that failed and a pilot who came home shaken. They had no view of the network that surrounded him. Inside their operations center, the concern grew. If one Su-30 could lose awareness so quickly, what would happen in a larger fight? What would happen if coastal radar tried to lock on to the wrong target? The uncertainty lingered longer than anyone wanted to admit. On the US side, the takeaway was simple. The system worked. AWACS tracked the threat. The Growler removed its eyes. The Raptors controlled the space behind it. And the B-52 stayed steady through all of it. Nothing looked rushed. Nothing looked unsure. It was quiet, coordinated control. The deeper message reached far beyond the pilots involved. Every military watching understood that the US didn't need to fire to win control of the sky. It only needed to see first and act through the network that tied everything together. The Su-30 pilot felt that truth even if he never saw the aircraft that pushed him back. When he landed, he wasn't just ending a mission. He was walking away from a moment that showed the gap between flying alone and flying against a system built from decades of experience. If you think this moment will shape Venezuela's next move, press 1. If you think the US network decided everything from the start, press 9 and subscribe for what comes next.